Hey, Kevin.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you as always.
You can start whenever you're ready.
Yes, so
Thanks, Alex. Hi, welcome everyone to the February 1st, 2022 meeting of the CB6 Environment and Parks Committee. My name is Kevin O'Keefe and I do serve as chair of this committee. Tonight we are joined by Community Associate Alex Crawford. The meeting is called to order at 7:02 p.m. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. Jeannie D'Onofrio, our vice chair, has volunteered to take minutes tonight. Thank you, Jeannie, joining us from upstate New York. You are all should have received an email from the board office with a link to the Doodle sign-up sheet for minute takers at your committee meetings in this new year. For your convenience, that link to the sign-up sheet is being posted in the chat as I speak. We will now take attendance by roll call. Alex will conduct the roll call.
Committee members, I will call your name and you will unmute yourselves. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Marty Barrett.
Present.
Matt Bondi.
Matt Bondi's here. Thank you.
Claire Brennan. Claire Brennan said she was going to be she's going to be here today.
She has a conflict.
Yep. Jeannie D'Onofrio.
present.
Paige Judge. Paige. I'll come back to Paige. Anton Malner.
Present.
Raj said he will not be here tonight. Kevin O'Keefe.
Present.
Reshma Patel.
Present.
Dean Stefanidis.
Present.
Mark Thompson. Mark. Maura. Actually, Maura said she was not going to be here
Correct.
today. Letty Simon.
Present.
And Paige, are you there? I see Paige is here, but in any case, we have quorum.
Thank you, Alex. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen in front of you. If there's no objection, we will adopt, there it is, the agenda as stated. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. And Alex, I don't see any, correct? Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. Now, the minutes from the December 7th committee meeting were distributed ahead of time. If there is no objection to those, we will adopt those minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting those minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no hands, the minutes from the December 7th meeting are adopted and will soon be available on the CB6 website. Now, in order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. There are 5. 1, no one may speak until granted the floor. 2, committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. 3, the chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. Any such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information, such as an email address, that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. 4, when a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you may speak. Last, 5, we are required by New York state law to have a transcript of this meeting. So please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. I will try to do the same. We start tonight's agenda with continuation of this committee's initiative, now in its 3rd month, to hear from at least one community group at each meeting. Now, as a reminder, this initiative is to let us know what's on the collective mind of each group and what issues the committee and the group may be able to work on together to improve district environment, parks, cultural affairs, and/or landmarks. This also, of course, gives us a telescope of what we may want to consider as we start at our next meeting at the projects, looking at the projects for which we want to recommend capital expenditures. Now, the St. Farton Pickleball Group has an active Slack user group. In agreeable weather, they often have more players waiting to play than there is space. The three representatives here tonight now have the floor to introduce themselves and to make a presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Zia Lovell, one of the representatives of the group tonight.
Okay, is Wendy going to, this is Charlie Banks. I'm also part of the pickleball group. Who is going to present Wendy, are you going to share the presentation?
I think Sue-Ann is going to share it. I'm Wendy
Okay,
Cohen,
great.
happy to be here.
I just want to make sure before we move ahead, do you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm going to remove this box, making sure people can see it. Alrighty, let's start. I know that we have limited time, but thanks so much for the opportunity for us tonight to talk about a topic that we think is very important to us. Just to start with, you see the Pickleball at St. Barton Parks group. We believe that pickleball will help us build a healthy and strong community through team sport. So just a little bit about us, if we can, yeah. So who we are, I mean, like this opportunity, I just want to have it so that I can share with you that we are here, we're real, we exist actively, and we play whenever the weather permits from dawn to dusk. I think the pickleball community here is the definition of diversity at its best, right? We have players from all genders and sexes, ethnic backgrounds. We have players who come from all different regions of the world. And when it comes to age, I cannot be more proud to say that at some point on the court, we have 3 different generations playing, competing at equal footing, and we had so much fun connecting and being in the same community. So I feel like it is some advantage that is hard to beat. So we are now a growing group, and we have supported one another on the courts and off the courts. It is a growing community, and I must say that we have been very consciously building a group whose the only fabric is friendship. So that's why, to the next point, I want to share more with you why pickleball is important to us, because it helps us stay healthy, right, mentally and physically, and we have more fun, we become more happy, and I cannot see what's wrong with the community that is packed with people who are happy and healthy. So we want more of that. We want more people to have what we have experienced. So you see that our group now have more than 200 members. The demand for the courts where we can play is going up, but that comes with the challenges, right? Because the interest is going up, the demands for the courts is going up, but the space that we can play on is going down. Over the course of a year after the installation of the turf, we have come from 12 courts we can play on to no courts at all. And so we had to do some makeshift courts on the handball courts. And why it is an interim solution for now, I must say that the condition of the courts is not safe. And we do care about the safety of our players. Let's say the size of the courts are not regulation size. It has bumps on the surface, and it has cracks that people may trip. So we are here and we are calling for help on improving that condition. But that's about it for me. The next piece, I would like to pass it over to Wendy.
Thanks, Sue-Ann. So why pay attention to pickleball? First of all, it is the fastest growing sport in America, and we are gaining traction even on an international scale. You may have heard of it, may have walked by the park and seen us playing. And the nice thing about pickleball is it really can accommodate a lot of players. We think we can get up to 64 players on our 4 courts, our 4 makeshift courts in an hour. whereas compared to handball or tennis might be 1 or 2 players for that same time frame. So more people, and it has a very low entry bar in terms of who can play. If you've played any racket sport in your life, you could play pickleball. Even if you haven't, probably takes about 10 minutes. The rules are a little harder, but the game itself is really easy, and it has helped our mental and physical well-being. And we really think it's a good thing for New York and for our community to be welcoming and to have the community sports and community activity here. So we're not asking for support without showing our own commitment. So far, we've bought our own nets and our balls, and we store them at our homes, and we schlep them over to the field. We've taught the beginners. In fact, in June, I had never played before. I heard about pickleball, knew I wanted to play, came to the courts one day, saw Zuen, and the rest is history. She taught me, she welcomed me, and I see that with everyone else too. Anyone who comes is welcome to learn and be part of our community. We play in 15-degree weather. In fact, Zuen was out there with Charlie shoveling snow today so that the courts could dry and people could play in the next few days. So we've organized clinics, we've organized tournaments, and we've celebrated special occasions together. We really are a community. And now I'll turn it over to Charlie for our ask.
All right, thanks, Wendy. I want to state that we want to do everything we can to collaborate with the folks at St. Martin Park. We're looking for a permanent solution, and we understand there probably needs to be an interim solution. On the permanent side, we're looking for dedicated courts. We enjoyed courts, as was stated earlier, at St. Martin's and Robert Moses, and we've lost the use of those courts with the installation of the turf. I do acknowledge that the turf has been a godsend for a lot of folks. I live across the street on First Avenue, and I can see the activity on a daily basis, but that doesn't help our community in terms of having a permanent place to play pickleball. So we think we could use 6 permanent courts with lighting. We do understand there's an issue with the surrounding residents in terms of lighting, but I think there's solutions that, having lighting till 8 or 9 o'clock at night not be as disruptive as some of the lights I see by the Midtown Tunnel on a regular basis. We are looking for clean, safe conditions. The expansion joints on the makeshift handball pickleball courts are in disrepair. It's very dangerous over and above the fact that it impedes the game of pickleball. The open streets has been tested. That is an issue because the convex nature of streets for rain runoff. So imagine not having a flat surface and a ball being hit and always going either right or left off of the court. So open streets is great, but that is without having a flat regulation size court, it's not very, very effective. On an interim basis, what we ask for is that we improve on the handball courts to make them regulation size and standard for a pickleball court. That would be, addressing the expansion, the concrete expansion joints, if possible, to even have those removed. I think that is a whole engineering issue, but for others to decide. We would want permanent lines painted. There's some makeshift lines that were painted by a few in our community, and we just want to make sure that everybody is safe while they're playing. The night lighting, again, I think would be a big benefit. Quite frankly, if there was night lighting even tonight, if that one court that we shoveled this afternoon was dried up, there'd be people playing until the lights went out. And there are people that are playing first thing in the morning. So the ask is, with respect, is can we work with you, collaborate on a permanent solution, as well as an immediate interim solution? The next page illustrates what a regulation pickleball court is, and what some tips on building a pickleball outdoor pickleball court. Included is a link with much more detail about official pickleball courts. And I will add that before I close is that I was just informed of a very significant tournament that's going to take place in New York City with some of the best pickleball players in the country. There's going to be a huge draw. We want to be part of that. We want St. Martin's as well as Central Park all to be part of the expansion of pickleball. With that, I respectfully thank everybody, and I want to know if there are any questions that we can provide answers for now, or follow up with answers if we don't have them top of mind at this point. Thank you, Kevin.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Duane, Wendy, and Charlie.
Should I stop sharing?
What's that?
Should I stop sharing my screen?
It's okay for now. Alex, we'll commandeer that if needed. So, but thank you for asking. Thank you for mentioning, by the way, I love everything you just mentioned, including the shoveling of the snow, even though I know that's a little bit of grunt work.
Sheena was very helpful, Kevin. She lent me a few shovels this afternoon. So it was nice to meet her after you mentioned her name in our call last week. Well,
If I can mention, Sheena is still somewhat new as a district manager. She continues to impress this committee and the community board with her resourcefulness and also her follow-up. She's somebody who not only takes notes, but looks at those notes during the day to make sure it gets done. The other day, I noticed that somebody was having trouble, one of the park workers opening a very rusty lock. I happened to see Sheena, bumped into her the same day, mentioned it to her. The next day, there was a shiny new lock there. So thank you. Yes, I definitely concur on Sheena's big bonus to the community. Yes. I know I'm going to start off with a question, and I know that the court area that gets a lot of pickleball use at St. Martin was made for handball. I actually saw it the other day being used in an old Hugh Grant movie for handball. How do the handball players and the pickleball players coexist? How's that relationship? And if they come and see that the space is being used for pickleball, are they respectful, and vice versa?
I'd say it's been very cordial. If we have 4 courts available, we use them. If somebody is playing tennis or handball in one of the courts, we respect that and use the others. There have been times where people say, how much longer are you playing for? We've stepped away, and so have they after a period of time. So it just means less for everyone, but we certainly want to work with our other community sport lovers and support each other.
And I thank you, Wendy. I would like to add that there's only one occurrence that I had, and it was most recently, that a group of 5 guys came to play handball and a court was available. And I'll add that there are some folks that play tennis and just practice and hitting the ball against the wall, and we've recruited them into our community.
I love that.
That's true.
Converted them.
Yes. Offered them our spare rackets.
I do want to move on with questions, and I see that Marty Barrett, our committee member, does have a question.
Actually, 2. Have you approached your elected officials? They tend to have a lot of money to distribute among many different groups, and they love that kind of thing.
Keith Powers is the elected official for, it's interesting because just below 35th Street is another elected official, but it is Keith Powers, a city council member who recently was named majority leader for the city council.
You could also approach your assembly person and state senator. They all get their own perks. Another question though is, where would you want to situate this? Do you want to do this to on the permanent basis to get rid of the handball courts, or to find a different spot? And if there is a different spot, where are you supposing it should be?
If it were to be the handball courts and they were regulation size, all right, I think that would be a very good start. All right, if that was not feasible, I think our community uses those 4 courts more than any tennis players or handball players. But if that were not feasible, and if the turf were to be peeled back on the western side, I think we could put on a north-south direction for a court, which is the preferred and recommended direction. We could possibly put 4 courts there without taking up all of the turf area. Don't know that there's any space available at Robert Moses, given the basketball courts on the east side and the turf on the west side, and whatever plans the parks group has for use of the Robert Moses turf.
Thanks, Charlie. And I also want to chime in here. We are looking for long-term solutions. That's our preference for now. And we know that things like that take time. So we are okay with resorting to some interim solutions for now, because the interest in playing the sport almost every day is there. And so we don't want to disrupt that. So in the long run, if we can close down the 36th Street and turn that into a dedicated area for pickleball, that would be great. To your question about whether we should make the handball courts the permanent place for pickleball, I saw this when the turf was installed. While it was great for many people, it's not very inclusive, right? It excluded certain groups who would need the blacktop to play. We would not want anybody to face the same situation that we faced before, that we were unhappy about. So to take away the space for people who come to use the handball courts for their own activities, I think is unfair, and I think it's not a very thoughtful solution. If we want to turn that into the space where pickleball people can play and other sport players can play and coexist the same way that we have been doing now, but improve the conditions of the space that we can use until a long-term solution is reached, then that would be ideal for the time being. Does it make sense?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And we're not just talking about that one space, we're talking about other opportunities. Matt Bondi has the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kevin. And I might have missed this, so just I apologize if I did, but how do you get down with a game of pickleball? Do I show up with my pickleball paddle and say I'd like to play, or how does that work?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yep.
Absolutely.
And
That's
join our
what we all
Slack.
do. Yeah.
And join our Slack group.
Okay.
My wife and I joined in 2020 just to get out of the house from COVID, and we became part of the Slack community. And we'd love to have you come on out and play. We may be playing tomorrow if the one court dries that we shoveled today.
Well, I got to figure out how to play first. I get invited
We'll
to play
teach
golf. And then when I tell people, I've never played before, they're like, oh, never mind. They uninvite me.
We all started out like that, and look where we are today. We help another out to learn the sport and then to get into a smooth transition until you can play well and commingle with others. So join the Slack channel, just drop in a message and say, hey, we're new with this sport. Can somebody organize a clinics where the beginners can get a few lessons before we play all together? We'll be happy to be there for you.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Wonderful. And don't see any other questions, please raise your hand. And Alex, if there's any questions that we should be answering from our attendees, please let me know. I do see potentially a hand there. Yeah, I see Catherine's on board, and I think Catherine is, the commissioner of pickleball for Manhattan. So it's nice to see you. Her hand is up. Catherine, I would love to give you the floor. Thanks for dropping in.
Hi, yes, thank you. I've been very interested. This group is fantastic and amazing. The only reason I did want to chime in because we've had a team leader group Zoom meeting. The team leader group from your group showed up. I was there, but next time we'll include you guys in the meetings that we've been having. We've been having them with William Castro, and we had it with Margaret Nelson, but now she's no longer the commissioner. And he's been trying to find spots for permanent pickleball courts for us. And one of the locations, because I agree with Deanne, what you were saying, that you don't want to displace so much the handball people, but there are unused handball facilities in your area, and handball is going down and pickleball is going up. So there has to be some, halfway. But the ones on the bottom of Robert Moses, there's handball courts there that he was in agreement with. Could be, if the wall was taken down, could be restructured to offer some permanent pickleball courts. You may not get 4, but no one goes down there. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that area, but we had talked to William Castro about that, and we had also put in proposals to the councils. We put in 2 proposals with the budgets up, and I believe the man that you spoke about, who was the district commissioner, was for 3. I think 3's proposals up. I don't know if your budget's up or not, but we put in 2 proposals, one for the Central Park group and one for the District 3. I don't know what district you guys are in per se, but just so that you know, we're all working together on this. And I was really happy that you got the street pickleball, but that really didn't work because we couldn't really close it. Deanne, I saw you and we were doing with the kids and got really involved there, but without closing the street permanently. And we also didn't have something to hold the balls from going back into the street, into First Avenue. So that really wasn't, but anyway, I applaud you guys. And just to let you know what we've been on board with William Castro looking for spots.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. And it's always nice, good to see you. And I know you were over at by the way, we do have a discussion coming up on open streets, on that open street on East 36th Street later on the agenda. If anybody from the pickleball community would like to stay, you're certainly our guest, and we hope that you can. I think that may be part of their presentation. This is for Alliance for Kips Bay, which has been the leader on making that open street happen. And again, yeah, just to circle back to something that Marty said on the elected officials, the community board makes recommendations and advises, and a lot of times works hand in hand with the elected officials. We're not a legislative body. We do make recommendations on expenditures in our district that the elected officials take very seriously. So we can work on a goal if we are in agreement as we continue throughout this year. But yeah, I would second what Marty said, and that and maybe we can help you. Making sure that you're get to the right person and the right address, the right email address, so that you can have the elected officials on your radar. And it's nice to know that Commissioner Castro is part of the pickleball conversation. That's very, very helpful. And later on, we'll be having also a report from the New York City Parks and Recreation, and they may touch on that as well, certainly if we have questions about it. And certainly you can address that as well. But thank you. Love what you're doing. I think it's a true definition of community, all the right ways, and keep it up. I've got a really bad back and can't do a lot of sports like I used to, but you might have convinced me to come by there.
Come try it.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome. Okay. Agenda item number 2 is a discussion of the Gramercy Park deed and tax assessment. This will be brief. We have been making progress on having our questions answered about the deed and the tax assessment. Although supported by a high-ranking elected city official whose term finished after our last meeting, our discussion continues with current elected leadership. As previously reported, the Gramercy Park Block Association and the Gramercy Park trustees have not answered any of our questions since they've learned that we actually have now a copy of the original park deed. That refusal has led to more public questions, including from some prominent New York-based media. So stay tuned. Agenda item number 3, discussion of permits for athletic fields for local nonprofit teams and youth for-profit travel teams. Now, as previously mentioned, as the East River Park goes more offline, space continues to be more and more at a premium. We know the Parks Department is able to prioritize youth activities in permitting. The questions we have from the community are whether there's a distinction between use by local nonprofit community leagues and for-profit so-called travel programs or travel teams. There is potential for our community leagues to be crowded out by youth travel leagues where participation is limited and screened. More regulation or guidance may be needed. Now, we're honored here tonight to have two leading recreation minds to help us with this discussion. One, I hope he's on board. I see he's registered, is Ken Conyers, the Parks Department's Deputy Chief of Recreation for Manhattan. Ken is known as the permits guru for those of us who have been coaches or otherwise around organized sports in the borough. The other individual is Eric Goldberg. Eric's the commissioner of softball for the city's 66-year-old Peter Stuyvesant Little League, or PSLL, which makes its home in our district. Murphy Park is one of the facilities that use PSLL. PSLL serves more than 800 youth baseball and softball players. My son and youngest daughter are two. I believe it still is the largest little league in the city of New York. PSLL is a fully volunteer nonprofit organization chartered by Little League International and runs winter, spring, challenger, and summer baseball programs for children of all abilities, ages 4 through 16. Before we hear from Ken, I would like to give Commissioner Goldberg the floor to, I'm sure, better articulate upcoming needs for permitting. Commissioner, you have the floor. And Alex, if we don't, I know that he is on there, if we can give him that status so he can speak.
Hi, sorry, you're saying,
Eric Goldberg.
yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Eric should be able to unmute himself.
Thank you for joining us. Eric?
Sure, thank you. Oh, hopefully I'm on right now and everyone can hear me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak, and certainly appreciate it. Thank you for the introduction, Kevin, on the issue. And really what I just wanted to share with this committee is an ongoing issue around space and allocation. And we always work very closely with New York City Parks Department and Ken in particular in figuring out the best way to serve children and players in our community. One thing that has started to become a bigger issue as space becomes more constrained is the Parks Department's ability to make distinctions among different types of youth organizations. So right now, when you're going through the permitting process, the only information that the Parks Department really has to go on is whether your organization serves youth or whether the organization serves adults. And the Parks Department does have a preference for serving youth organizations. But what I want to bring to this committee today is an opportunity to think about making further distinctions to serve what I think are the needs of the community, and help the Parks Department have the information that they require to make some of those distinctions. So there's really three things that I think are important for Parks Department to understand. First and foremost is whether the youth organization is a nonprofit or a for-profit entity. And right now they don't have the ability to make that distinction. Second is whether the organization is a volunteer-led organization or one that is paid and has paid staff. And the third is to the extent to which the organization is open access to all children in the community versus leagues that are tryouts or screened and actually, aren't open to everyone. So, in this sort of constrained environment, it just becomes more pressing that I think that we start to ask those questions around the status of the organization, who is staffing it, and who it's open to. So I thought it was important as we look forward that these types of organizations are served better. And I do think that the Parks Department would love to have this information at hand as they make decisions. So thank you for that opportunity. If there's any questions, I'm happy to, give, some perspective on it as well.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate that. And it's an important issue. And it's going to, like you said, it's going to become more important. Marty Barrett has the floor.
It would be simple to know if they're not for profit by having them in their submission submit their CHAR 500.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's lots of opportunities to share information on the 3 items that I spoke about. But right now on the website, it really is that, it's that basic question on whether it serves youth or adults. They do ask for the organization's name and title, so they probably have that information, but I don't believe that they make decisions based on it. And that's something that's unclear. And I think that the key piece is really, to some extent, the second and third questions as well, because many organizations are chartered as nonprofits, but they're staffed, fully by paid coaches, even though, the organization itself isn't a for-profit entity, and they all have tryouts and are limited in terms of the players that they serve.
And I think it's worth pointing out too, again, I'm sure, Eric, you can articulate this better. Peter Stuyvesant Little League has a very active Challenger League. And for those that you don't know, that truly shows that the community is representative in sports of people of all abilities. You want to touch on that just so for those that don't know about the Challenger League, Eric?
Sure. So, and let me, add, 2 pieces of programming. First, as you just pointed out, Kevin, is we do have a Challenger League, which serves players with special needs who need accommodations in order to enjoy and play baseball or softball. So that is one of the highlights of our programming, and a real draw for the community beyond what we would say is the zone or the borders for the PSLL. Because there's not many leagues that offer that challenger opportunity. The second piece, actually, and something that I'm deeply involved in, is softball. Softball is a sport that continues to try and grow, and we've had struggles here on the east side of Manhattan. Unfortunately, the Yorkville Little League is no longer offering softball activities, and OLS Little League, which is just to the south, has very limited softball offerings. And Peter Stuyvesant is one of the few leagues that still offers robust softball programming. We'll have about 200 girls playing softball this season. So, that's, another need, and not to kind of be exclusionary there, but a lot of the travel teams going for this space are predominantly male-oriented, leagues and teams.
Good point. And I believe Ken is here from the Parks Department. It's just such a privilege to have you here. I think, and I know, like you said, Eric, you do work with him, and heard great things about the administrative process of permits. But I think there are some questions, Ken, about what's the priority of the things that Eric had touched on and that I had touched on regarding nonprofits and profits. If you can join the conversation, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Sure. Ken Conyers, Manhattan Deputy Chief here. I also oversee permitting in Manhattan as well as across the city for the Ball Field Task Force. So I help coordinate efforts across the entire city. So Sheena had called me today and told me about this conversation and asked me to jump on. So I was happy to answer some of these questions. Hey, Eric, we talked to Eric quite a bit.
Hey, Ken, how are you?
Doing good. So permitting is a very interesting world, and it's gotten a little more interesting over the course of the last 10 years. Oh, I muted myself by accident. What I would say is there's very strict rules and guidelines for processing permits and the priority levels of permits. It's very interesting that this conversation is coming up today, because we just had what I considered a marathon meeting this afternoon about this exact topic, and it's related to getting more information on organizations, classifying them in a much different way, having subtypes of organizations, and et cetera. So we have a lot more information in our back office than you put into the system, Eric. So we do have additional information on organizations, groups, their uses, and their structure. So we know a little bit more of that information. The problem, I wouldn't say the problem, but the situation right now is we don't use that necessarily to always make decisions against permits, because our rules state very simply youth versus adult. And there's a couple of other things within the rules that we have some flexibility on to make permitting decisions. We are looking to expand on some of that, and that's part of what the conversation was today. We take a lot of factors into play, such as local groups, free programming, and various other factors, but unfortunately, they're not rule-based. So there's some discretion there amongst our permit coordinators to use some of that, but again, not rule-based. I think that our permit officers do a really tremendous job trying to get everybody the spaces they need. I hear the in-house or the local community organization versus travel team conversation quite a bit around the city. And I would just, like I do every other time I discuss it, it's just caution people that those are community kids as well. And just playing maybe at a different level or playing in a different type of sport. Some sports don't have so much recreation in-house. They have mostly just travel. So those are community kids usually as well. But we definitely understand the paid versus free. We understand tryout versus non-tryout. So we take some of that into consideration. But like I said before, rule-based, it's simply youth versus adult. But a lot more goes into it behind the scenes, which is why you see a lot more of the community groups on the fields than you see your travel organizations. Now, specifically in your area where we did some turf replacements, we had told the community board and the council members and others that we are prioritizing local groups on those fields and youth. So because of the East River Park closure and losing some fields over there, at this point, we are prioritizing local and youth groups there. So if you're not finding space, and I think, Eric, for your specific sport, and I know this is not about just PSLL, I think we're well on the way of getting you what you need for your softball program in the local community. I'll stop there. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions or.
Kevin, if I could just respond.
Thank you, Ken. And yes, Eric, please go ahead, Eric.
Oh, I was just going to add, and just to say publicly in this forum, Ken, thank you so much to you and your team for everything you do to support PSLL and other local organizations. We had this discussion sort of independent of PSLL, just more as a practice, as you brought out. It was bringing up this general question to the community board on what flexibility Parks has in permitting. And as you said, the rules-based piece really is very simplistic. You and your team do a great job in trying to understand the organizations and put the art behind the science. But at the same time, it would be wonderful if we could have a fuller discussion, here at the community board, just around how we could codify some of that, not for our specific needs, but just more in general for principles and, how we think, parks and open space should be utilized.
Definitely. And I just put one quick comment towards that. So just to put context on it, we are kind of deep in the weeds with doing some of this in parks now. So we some changes are going to become part of the application and part of the system, which is going to require additional information. So I'm happy to share that with the community board and with you about some of the changes that we can expect very shortly, which is working on this, and happy to discuss further ways to get that information and to look at our rules to see how we can utilize some other criteria to make some decisions.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you, Ken. I know I could speak for the community board that we would love to be a continued part of that discussion. It's so important, especially like we said at the top, with the squeeze Ace River Park is giving to very limited space as it is in our district. It's so important. Another issue, and I think Eric could probably address this too, is what happens when somebody gets a permit and doesn't show up and use that space? Are they penalized at all? Is there a fine? Because that's an issue too, when someone sees those permits unused.
Definitely. So this is by far the number one issue amongst permits. So it's an area that we have done tremendous work on. I would say it's really in the last 2 years, probably PSLL and hundreds of other organizations probably had a parks employee walk up to them, whether it be a PEP officer or a permit coordinator, and ask them for their permit, ask them for specifics about what they're doing, ask them for their AED or other things. So we did a really robust inspection program this past spring and summer, which resulted in some permit time being revoked, some reductions in time and other things because people are not using it. Some of the changes we are making to our system and to the further classification of permits as well as permit types. So there's game versus practice and other things. Some of that additional information we're going to be collecting is going to allow us to pinpoint some inspections and allow us to really get out there and do further inspections. So as far as the penalty for not using your field, we don't just on the first occasion pull any permit time, reduce any permit time, revoke any permits, but we definitely have a conversation after the first time. After that, if we do see it multiple times, 2 times, 3 times, we really have a conversation. Then it's a little bit less of a conversation, I have to say. It's a little bit more of reduction of time. And it can go as far as revocation of your entire permit if you're not using it. But I will say, I do know, like you had mentioned, this has been a large issue. That we're also working on some technology that is going to help some of this. It's a little bit off. It's well, kind of far off. We're at the early stages of it, but it would dramatically change the permitting world when it comes to usage of fields. So a lot of good movement in this area. We do ask that anybody that sees space that's not being utilized properly, or if we know about a permit that should be there, because it's all public on our website. If you see that a permit should be there from 6 to 8, they're not. If you call 311, that also helps us to prompt inspections in that area.
And do you try to encourage anybody who feels that they won't use that permit to certainly let you know in advance, even if it's an hour that you, and if it is, could you then potentially, do you have a waiting list to see if somebody can pull it together in an hour or 2 hours and use that space?
So we ask them to tell us, we request at least 24 hours in advance. The reason why we request 24 hours in advance is because our system updates every night around midnight to make it live on the website. But if people are not using the field, we don't have a mechanism right now to let other people know unless it's 24 hours in advance. But quite often we'll get a phone call that they're not using certain times of their permits, they're not using certain days of their permits, or they're abandoning their permit because they didn't get the activity or the registration or whatever that they expected, and that is opened up to other permit holders. And that's a constant evolving thing throughout the whole season, or all seasons actually.
Thank you. Eric or anyone else, if you have questions, Eric, you can jump in. Anybody else, just raise your hand if you do. I want to make sure that we do have Ken here. This is the time to ask.
I would just recognize quickly, Kevin, that as Ken said, it is, as you know, a very complicated process, and it's hard to monitor all the fields and ensure adherence. I know at PSLL, we have a practice where on Sunday night, we go back and poll all of the teams and all the managers and commissioners to ensure that they're using their permits. And if they're not, we return them. But it's definitely hard to manage, and appreciate everything Ken's trying to do to make fields back available, as they are.
Yes, thank you. And I second that with Ken, and especially with a quick turnaround on our request. We knew this, as we hear from more and more people about permits, that this was important to have you here. So thank you for being here. I don't think, unless Alex, you see other questions, thank you for your time, Ken and Eric. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me tonight.
Of course. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item number 4, which is the discussion of a continuation of the 36th Street open street that I had mentioned earlier. Now, this committee previously passed a resolution for an open street there. It was titled Resolution Requesting that a portion of East 36th Street between First Avenue and Tunnel Approach Street be included in the New York City Department of Transportation's Open Streets program. That resolution passed the full community board with 38 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention, and 1 not entitled. That helped lead to a trial open street on that St. Martin Park adjacent stretch last year. Many in our district have noted directly to me that it was of great benefit to the community. Now, Alliance for Kips Bay, which has long been the leader on this initiative, now has an opportunity to turn that open street permanent. Here to share more is a leader of Alliance for Kips Bay, or all KB, Sandy McKee. I'm looking if you're there. It looks like you are. You have the floor.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Kevin. I'm going to share some of the information that we have. We have, and apologies, I have some very out of focus photographs to show you, but to start off, we have applied for a permit again this year. And we've asked to have the street open from April the 23rd, when we're going to be having an Earth Day celebration, to the end of October. Last year, we had a really successful Halloween party, and that's when we probably would close down. We are asking to have the street be open on Saturdays and Sundays. So it's not closed fully over for the full week. But now the Open Street program is being supported by the city, and some of the open streets will become permanent. So that's our goal. For now, we have a kind of limited time frame that we're looking at. But it was a very successful fall that we had. We had a lot of support from community groups, local businesses. And this is the basic layout. We have to deal with the EDC, DDC storage currently. It will go away eventually. It was a 4-year project. It's been delayed. We have signage and barricades. We have signage actually on the Tunnel Approach Street, which is an MTA street. It's not actually a DOT street. And we have barricades and signage at 2nd Avenue. And over the course of the fall, we developed some additional signage. So we have signage on both sides of 2nd Avenue, and we have signage on both sides of 35th Street to alert traffic that it's really only the access to the tunnel that's available. So I'll just, this is an example of some of the signage that we had, and one of our volunteers. And currently we have someone at the barricades all the time in case someone didn't read the sign. It's amazing how many people in New York traffic don't actually do that. Some examples, this is actually pickleball. This was the court that they said was not quite successful, but was still highly used. And the tape is still there on the site. We had a visiting fire truck. This was incredibly popular with the community. Lots of kids, they got to sit in the truck. There's a performance going on a little further back that you can't see here, but some music. And this was Halloween, which I think they said there were over 500 people signed up to come. And this was this is from the other side. Again, we had one of the local cafes sponsored a clown to come, incredibly popular. Some of the other events we had, this was crafts that were being done. One of our younger advocates, this was a camp that was there almost every weekend. And here we are at the barricades. So we're trying to gain support from the rest of the community. We did have some pushback from the MTA, and they felt that without community support, we might not be able to open the street again. So that's really what we're looking for here, is some support from CB6, and from if there are any questions, be happy to answer them. And Sheena, I see you're on the call too. We're going to ask you also for some support later on. We did get some great support from the parks.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you so much. I have to point out, though, that you left out Bike New York. One of the best things that I saw that happened there was Bike New York, and thank you to Ken Paziba, the head of Bike New York, and his deputy, Andy Gould, for having classes there to teach kids how to bike and to give them skill lessons. One of the things I know personally, my 3 children learned to ride a bike at St. Martin Park. With the turf down now, it's not really conducive to riding a bike. So that gave an opportunity for kids to ride on that street. And wasn't it great, Sandy, to actually see kids learn how to ride a bike for the first time because of the open street?
And I actually do have quite a few photographs of that, but yes, they were great. They came twice and well attended.
So look, I've already pointed out that this committee did pass, not only passed a resolution, but it passed full board for a trial. I will ask if anybody has any motions to make here. I think it's very natural.
I have a question.
Sure.
You can hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. I'm actually really for it. The problem is that we have parked vehicles there, and that's a concern. We are already getting a lot of pushback from some of the community. I received a letter yesterday. I don't know, Keith, if you were on it, that email from yesterday. But if I'm for it, if we can get the DOT to give us that space along First Avenue between 35th and 36th, and for our parks vehicles, and just dedicate that for us, so then we'll be out of the park and we won't need to be parked on the side of 36th Street, because we will need to park our vehicles somewhere, because St. Martin's is our hub place. So
this is the first time hearing of that. I did not see that. Thank you for bringing it to attention. And we'll open it up for any other questions certainly as well. But I don't know the answer to rectifying that. Sandy, your thoughts?
Well, I know there were several times in the fall when there were vehicles parked there. And I mean, it's an extremely long street, so it probably could work, especially the vehicles weren't there full time. And what we're looking at currently is probably opening at 10 and closing at 3 or 4. Which may work with your schedule, but I must say that any of the people who needed to park a vehicle were very good about doing it right at First Avenue. And also right now there's space in front of and behind the EDC, DDC storage areas. So in the interim, we certainly can accommodate vehicles there. I think it would be great if they could give a more permanent parking space, especially First Avenue right there is not that busy.
Sheena, how many spaces do you need?
Well, we have a total of 6 vehicles. So, we need to be able to accommodate those 6 vehicles.
And will they be parked there for the most part, or will they be coming in and out during the hours?
That's the issue. So what happens is that we generally leave around 8 o'clock. And depending on the day of, with staffing numbers, the workers get their assignments and then they leave for the day. They come back around 11:45, and then they go back out by 12:30, and then they're back by 3. So we don't interrupt anyone, especially if they're going to make this permanent. having that space between 36th and 35th Street along First Avenue for our parks vehicles will do us fine. And you can have that, we would need to be in that space or in that block to disturb anyone. So that's that's a concern of mine, because we need to be able to have, to be able to come to Barton's, because that's our biggest site in the District 6 area. There's not another site that we can accommodate the vehicles. And I'm not sure if they're going to build anything for us.
And there's also, I know that it's very helpful to parks because there's office space there, which other parks don't necessarily have.
Correct.
And you're able to do.
Yeah, but if DOT was to accommodate us with that, then it works well for me.
And if I could just say, I think it would be fantastic, because I know right now sometimes you do have to park inside the park, which is obviously not your preferred, but probably the only place that you can. So we're happy to take that up with the DOT, especially as we discuss the open street. We'll ask them about that, because I think it's a great solution to have.
I love that idea. You're talking about that whole, why not, the whole stretch between 35th and 36th, between the River School and the Garden?
Yes.
Those parking spaces on either side of the street? Well, I guess.
No, just on the side where, and that should be enough for our vehicles to be able to park there. But if it's dedicated to us, it works for us. And then that'll get us out of the park and into the street where we should be.
It's
but
a win-win.
lot of times when NYPD takes over, we have to move our vehicles because they use the entire stretch. And even during the summertime, we noticed that we had to move our vehicles inside because they needed to use it for the open street, and which was no problem with us. We just don't want to be in the park. We would rather be on the street.
Yeah, no, and I think the parks goers would like the vehicles to be on the street as well.
Right, and I will too, but it's very limited parking because we can't find space. And that's the only side that we can do. We don't want to be too far away from the vehicles where we're getting out even later. So that will help us if DOT was to oblige us with that. That'll be great.
We will definitely, we'll ask them about that. I think it's a good solution.
Can you bake that into your proposal to the DOT?
Yes. We have already applied, but we will be going through, further discussions with them.
Any other questions about this before we move on to potential action? I don't see any. As committee chair, I can't necessarily make a resolution myself, but I certainly would think that somebody else can consider doing so to continue this permanence and to have in there potentially, if you feel that, to have that parking dedicated on First Avenue for the Parks Department all the way from 35th to 36th. So I will.
Sorry.
Oh, Catherine.
There is a hand raised. Sorry.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry. And I didn't see it. So who are we calling on?
Catherine Hedden.
Oh, go ahead, Catherine.
Hi, I just wanted to mention that when we played pickleball, it was great having it in the street, but you really do need netting because I'm all about safety first. I mean, I really make sure that we even have a defibrillator when I go to places. But the netting going to First Avenue was real important because even when we were playing with the kids, the balls are running that way and the kids are running after it, people are running after it. And when I tried to get the netting, the orange netting or something, we just didn't have it. And because the bicycles kept going through, it needs to be netting, a gated netting or something that you could open and close.
Well, I think thank you. I think the goal is to get the open street is what from Sandy's perspective. And then after that, we can work on details that need to be done.
Okay, I thought you already had the open street. That's why I was saying, just make sure you have.
No, it was a trial run, and this is the proposal that Sandy McKee just did was their application to Department of Transportation to make it a permanent.
Oh, okay,
hopefully, no worries.
And Catherine, just to let you know, we have one of the plans we have is to get a storage space so we can store a net permanently.
Oh, great. Good job, Sandra. Good job.
We're working on it.
Great job. Thank you.
Yeah, that's something that we're continuing to discuss as well. So I think we're at a point now where, again, if somebody would like to propose any forward movement with this plan of keeping this open street permanent, recognizing, the parking is needed for parks. That's very important. I will give the floor kindly to anybody who so proposes.
Kevin, I make a motion to have a resolution in favor of having an open street on East 36th Street between First Avenue and the tunnel approach, making sure that there is ample parking for the Parks Department.
Wonderful.
I second
Thank
that.
you for the
Sounds good
second.
to me.
Thank you. And Jeannie, you got that for the minutes, the seconded as well?
I sure do. Anton seconded.
Thank you. Okay, we will now take a vote on what Reshma just nicely crystallized. This will be done by roll call. When your name is called for your vote, you can unmute yourself and answer yes, no, abstain, or not entitled. Alex will tally votes and declare a result. I'm handing it over to Alex.
Committee members, I'm going to go through the roll call. Marty Barrett,
Yay.
Matt Bondi,
Yes.
Claire Brennan,
Abstain for cause.
Jeannie D'Onofrio,
In favor?
Paige Judge, Paige Judge. I can come back to Paige. Anton Malner,
In favor.
Kevin O'Keefe,
Yes, in favor.
Reshma Patel,
In favor.
Dean Stefanides,
In favor.
and Letty Simon. Letty, are you there? I'm going to go back. Paige. And Letty, are you there? In that case, the resolution passes with 7 in favor and 1 abstaining for cause.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Sandy, for the presentation. In all else, thank you again to Alliance for Kips Bay for being such a community leader. This is an important step forward, I believe.
Great. Thank you so much to the committee.
Thank you for listening to Sheena's call for parking. I think that's wonderful to have that dedicated space and again, to get the vehicles out of the park.
Thank you, Sandra. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Speaking of Sheena and the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation, Sheena has the floor now for a report.
Hello. So speaking to Steve tonight, he said that for Pier 38, they're looking to, they're looking into it and to see if we can be able to do something with that area. He's there. It's great consideration, as she says, for for making that a dog run. I believe that's what was requested
Yes.
prior. So, but it's great consideration. So they're still working on it. So
this is a space that hugs the New Wave Pier that leads up to just south, the new pier that leads just south of the United Nations. It's being proposed as a dog run. There actually is a walkthrough with Parks Department personnel involved, including Mark Vaccaro, for Thursday morning. So that's wonderful. And having heard the news about the walkthrough, I was hoping, like you said, that it looks like the consideration is being taken seriously.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't have anything. If anyone has anything, they can speak. Any questions?
Members of the public or members of the committee, you certainly can ask any questions. I do see a raised hand. Phyllis Mangles. Hey, Phyllis, you have the floor. We're giving her permission to speak. You have been
Phyllis,
promoted.
you can,
Oh, okay.
yeah, you
I'm
can
sorry.
unmute.
Anyway, thanks. Kevin, we had spoken about the lighting situation in the East Park,
Mhm.
the south end of the park, and I had talked to Sheena about it last week. And since we spoke, Kevin, the situation has gotten a little worse because the park house on the east side has lost its power, has no electricity. So the light that was on the front of that park house, that at least it was very strong, powerful light, like a spotlight, is not functioning anymore. Now, when we had reached out to Mark Vaccaro, the dog run had reached out to Mark Vaccaro, and he had said that DOT had is changing all the park's lights to LED. He said the list order of the change out was set years ago. And Kevin, you said you were going to reach out to your transportation committee.
Correct.
To see if they could find out where Stuyvesant, because Parks has no control over that, because we asked Mark if there was any way we could find out where Stuyvesant was on the list. And he said, no, that was a DOT thing. So I was
Yes.
wondering if your committee was able to find out anything.
Yeah, thank you for the question. They did not meet last month, the Transportation Committee, although they are aware of it. I will make sure that we'll have another conversation to address it at their next meeting. I will let you know when that has been scheduled, but they did not have a meeting as we thought they would have. It wasn't held at all.
Yeah.
I don't know if Sheena, you have anything to add. Obviously, we're talking about Stuyvesant Park on 2nd Avenue.
Well, Mark is actually right about they're changing over, and we don't have any control over how DOT is going to do that. We can ask, I'm sure, but it doesn't. They already made these decisions prior to even, meeting with Parks. So some areas have been done over and some haven't been. And I just don't know where they, and that's all over. That's all over, even where, prior to my coming to 6, 8, and 15, we had an issue in a lot of our parks there, so I don't know how they're working at. I really don't. The electricity in the building hasn't been restored because it's out now. And I don't know when it's going to be repaired or not. I will see if they can come up with something for the light, but I don't know. Anything that's causing some money, it's not gonna work probably with us because we're on a freeze at this moment. We can't even do any hiring. So, I don't, and I'm hoping that this is temporary until things iron out with, with all that's going on within the city. So at this moment in time, it is to be a problem, but I don't know how to resolve it when there's a budget cut and we can't request anything at this present time.
I think transportation is the way to go. And
Yes, I agree.
yeah. And did you, well, we'll continue. I'll be happy to keep pushing on that. And Sheena, that freeze, and is that overtime as well? No overtime. So that hurts, really hurt.
No, it's not for like snow detail. That's a different budget. That's that's already budgeted in the yearly budget. So that the overtime for like snow details or emergency catastrophes, that's not included in. We're just talking about, general. At this moment, we're not hiring anything or we're not purchasing anything unless it's on an emergency basis.
Gotcha.
Like if something, really was, devastating, we are probably able to, backfill out to purchase something. The light is just a situation where the electricity went out and because of the building, the structure of the building. And I'm sure that building has been going down for a period of time. So it just finally we had to, remove all electricity, just to keep, things afloat until we can get the building to be, looked at and done over. And I just don't know when that can happen.
Okay. Thank you. Unless there's, yes, I'm sorry, Jeannie, you have the floor.
Yes, hi, thanks. A question. How difficult would it be if me or somebody or anybody went on Amazon.com and bought a half a dozen or a dozen solar spotlights that all you need is 2 Phillip head screws to stick them into the building, and then you have some safety light, you have some lights on at night, no electricity, that provides some safety, inexpensive, quick fix in the interim. If we're hearing that we have no idea when this building's, the electricity is going to be restored, that is dark and potentially dangerous, could I literally go out go to Amazon or to a hardware store and buy a bunch of solar lights and screw them onto the building?
I don't know if you can screw them onto the building, but I'll look into it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I'll look into it. I can't promise you, but I can look into it.
If you need a donation, I'll be happy to make it.
No, I was going to say, I'm sure, SPNA would be willing to contribute to the cost of something like that.
I'll look into it.
Yeah,
Right.
because it is a matter of safety over there.
Right. Well, but thank you, Jeannie, and I'll match your funds as well. I'd be happy to donate as well, if that can be done.
Sure.
Thank you.
Count me in too.
Wonderful.
Thank
Yeah. Hey, we've got a movement here, Phyllis.
Yes, this is great.
1,000 points of lights or 1,000 lights or something like that. I'm sure there's a working title in there somewhere. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go over, we're talking about the Transportation Committee, Chair's report. I'm still seeking a committee member to work with a member of the Transportation Committee on a plan for floodwater mitigation. Again, I didn't really fast track this since they didn't have a last meeting. You could let me know offline if you are that person. This is going to be an important subject as we go forward in the city for flood mitigation. That is, well, I will say on committee vision, I mentioned this at the executive committee meeting. We continue to progress on more open space in the district. We hope to secure elected officials to help us reopen the UN Park space to the public. More than 20 years later, the UN still cites 9/11 as reason for that closure. Also, the bridges and tunnel space on First Avenue between 36th and 37th Street is now even stronger on our radar. We will continue to have those conversations, and I'll keep you updated. If any member of this committee has any old or new business, or any member of the community, please raise your hand. Old or new business, going once. I do see one hand from Lou Spersky. You have the floor.
Yes, I'd like to find out from the Department of Parks why the benches were removed from the Ralph Bunche Park on First Avenue between 42nd and 43rd Streets. That happened some time ago, and there's been no report on why those benches were removed. We get some.
I can only, that was done prior to me coming to this area. I can only guess that the reason why they were removed was because there was a lot of homeless issues over there, and they were sleeping and laying, throughout the day and causing probably some havoc over there. That's the only way I could guess that's happening. We're having the same problem at Tylevia Plaza as well now. So I can only guess that because they're so close in proximity that was the case.
Could we get a somewhat more depthy report? I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between Ralph Bunche Park and the Trigg Valley Park, which is on the other side of other side of 42nd Street. I'd like to get, and if that's the matter, why it wasn't referred to the board for discussion and some effort to resolve the problem other than removing the benches.
I don't know that it wasn't brought to the board. Usually before they make a move like that, they consult with the board members, and that's all the time. We do that everywhere.
That was never referred to the community board because I'm acutely aware of that park.
Oh, okay. I mean, I would think so because that's what we do in standard. But it's probably was a decision that was made, you know, when the commissioner makes these decisions, he takes it really into great consideration before doing anything like that. So I don't know. I can refer it to Mark so Mark can give a full explanation. But, you know, generally when it's like that, and as I can see it, it's, you know, it's a homeless condition because we still having a homeless. They're now sleeping in the beds now. It's covers and blankets and pillows. They're sleeping inside the beds there now, in the horticulture part of it. So I'm assuming that's probably the big part of why it was done. I can ask Mark and I'll ask him if that was the case. I'll get back to you.
Thank you. We'd appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I'd appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. I was reminded, Sheena, that, and I should know this, but I don't, that there is a request to try to get a park bench with a plaque in memory of somebody. Who is the point person if we were to go down that road?
They emailed me tonight. I was emailed tonight about it. I responded. It goes to our marketing division. Sarah West. And so I responded, and Sarah probably will respond tomorrow because she's goes for the evening. But yes, it's great. You can do it. We have no problem in doing that, making that happen.
So somebody who spent a lot of time in the park. Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't see any more hands. So do I have a motion to adjourn? Or we could just sit here for the night. That's cool.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh,
Second.
Second. It doesn't need a second. Thank you. Seeing no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 8:23 p.m. Alex will end the live stream both via the Zoom app and on the YouTube back end.